could you give a big thunderous round of applause to Katrina Crowe, who's the curator of the first Thought Talks. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. And thanks to everybody who has been working with us here over the last 2 weeks at First Thought Talks. We have a fantastic staff of employees and volunteers. Jack, of course, without whom nothing could possibly move, and his father Declan, and Jonathan, who's been recording everything, Oisín, who's our microphone man, who does a splendid job on the sound, and the hard-working Micheál, who's out there dispensing tickets to people from the box office. So we're very grateful to all of them for this series of talks this year. Now, this is our last event for this year at First Thought Talks, and it's a lovely event. We've had a lot of very serious issues to be discussed over the last 2 weeks, the trouble in America with the orange monster in the White House being one of the main things. Obviously the disastrous situation in Gaza, issues around child pornography, conspiracy theories, all of that. But this is about sea swimming, which I imagine many of you in the audience like to engage in. I would be afraid myself that I might drown if I went swimming in the sea. But we have very brave women here. On my left, Rebecca Braun, who is Executive Dean of the College of Arts, Social Sciences and Celtic Studies at the University of Galway, and she's an enthusiastic sea swimmer. She took it up during COVID, and she has remained in thrall to the waves ever since. She's translated a book on the subject, which John will bring her through and tell you more about, in which a character decides to swim the English Channel. And then we have Dee Newell, who has actually swum the English Channel. Can you imagine doing that? And the Galway Marathon, and she's going to give us the benefit of her wisdom on the whole matter of the sea. Moderator is John Caulfield, who works in the President's office here in the August University of Galway, and he's chair of the Galway Arts Centre. He promised he was going to take a dip before this event today. Did you take a dip, John?
Reluctantly.
Ah. So he comes here with his credentials intact. Please welcome our guests.
Thank you, Katrina. Katrina, I just want to congratulate you on a wonderful, a fabulous fortnight of First Thought Talks. This is the 18th and last one. We're so lucky here in Galway to benefit from that big, beautiful brain of yours, your wonderful wit, your incredible contact address book, or else just your power of persuasion, Katrina, okay? And also that voice, okay, which would lure us and keep us enthralled in this windowless room for hours. The thought did cross my mind. President Crowe has a nice ring about it, doesn't it? Okay. We talked a lot about presents, too much about presents this week. Anyway, you've heard it here first, and the campaign starts outside the door at 2 p.m. If Michael Flatley can do it, well, then surely Katrina Crowe can do it. Okay. Okay, Acharda, you're very welcome here. Delighted that our last talk of the series can be on that cultural and social phenomenon, that juggernaut that is sea swimming. And I have two fascinating women here beside me who are going to approach it from two totally different perspectives. And it's my job just to facilitate the conversation and keep it going. Slightly disappointed nobody arrived in their wetsuits. So I do need to check your sea swimming credentials, folks. Okay, so hands up, please, if you've been in the sea in 2025, this year. Good stuff. Okay, right. We have, no, keep them up now, keep them up. So we have a few people to convert. Okay, so keep your hand up if you've been in the sea over 10 times this year, let's say. Okay, keep them up if you've been in the sea pretty much every week this year. We'll forgive you a few in January, February. Okay, we're getting to the hardcore here now. And then keep them up further if you've been in the sea pretty much every day this year. Wow, okay, so we have, well done. These are the ultras here in the front. Okay, so we have a smattering of experiences here in the room. I'm delighted to say we have a smattering of experiences here on the stage too, from our endurance swimmer, our occasional swimmer, and our lapsed swimmer. But I did go in July. Okay, so we'll keep that in mind, and hopefully today's talk will inspire some of you who didn't have your hands up to dare to begin, as you would say, Dee, your sea swimming journey. Okay, so beside me here we have Dee Newell, known as Dee from the Sea. She's an open water endurance swimmer from Galway. And after years of swimming competitively in the pool with the Shark Swim Club in Salt Hill, go Sharks, she fell in love with long-distance sea swimming in college. It is love, it's obsession, right?
Yeah.
In 2019, she completed a solo swim across the English Channel, as Katrina said, and that same year, she also completed a relay across the Irish Sea and went on to swim from Robben Island to Cape Town in South Africa. 2020, she did an ice kilometre swim in Antarctica. That's exactly what it sounds like. That makes me feel pathetic, struggling to get in July. And this February, she completed a solo crossing of False Bay in South Africa, which is one of the world's most shark-filled and unpredictable open water sea swims. She says that none of these swims would have been possible had it not been for the Galway sea swimming community, more specifically the Galway Bay Swim. We'll talk about that in a little while. That which has been so important to her sparking and growing her obsession. Although injury prevented her crutches are off stage, prevented her from undertaking a planned North Channel swim this season. She got tantalisingly close last year. The crutches are keeping her at bay for now. She remains deeply involved in the sea swimming community here, and with her crutches, co-hosts the podcast She Swims, He Swims with Ian Claxton. So you're very welcome, Dee. Beside Dee is Rebecca Braun, who is established Professor of German and World Literature here at University of Galway, and as you said, Katrina, the Executive Dean of the College of Arts, Social Sciences and Celtic Studies. And this is a first for Rebecca. She's never seen a venue in the university fill up from the front rows back. That's very, very, very unusual. Very unusual. She studied French and German at the University of Oxford, and she's had an interest in literary translation ever since, with numerous translated works to her name. She's held visiting research positions and academic appointments in universities in Berlin, Oxford, Manchester, Liverpool and Lancaster before moving back to Ireland in 2021 with her family. And the sea, I understand, was part of the lure, okay? All her academic work builds on a deep understanding of the power of people and stories, which she's traced in 8 books and over 30 articles on authorship, world literature, transnationalism and cultural value. And the reason she's here taking part in a sea swimming discussion is this book, which Vinnie Brown is in the back, it has just landed in Galway, a box of them. Am I right, Vinnie? Well done. We believe they're outside the door. Is her just published translation of a German novel, a very special German novel, by Ulrike Draesner, originally called Kanalschwimmer, translated now for English readers around the world as Channel Swimmer, and it's available outside after. So that's your great insight into it, having spent all those tortuous hours translating this one swimmer, Charles's experience. In her spare time, Rebecca enjoys long-distance running and sea swimming in a rather undisciplined manner, she says. Okay, so I'm going to open. Dee, what first drew you to the sea, out of the pool and into the sea? And could you talk about that moment where you decided, I can take on long-distance swimming?
Well, as you said in the intro, I started with Shark Swimmers, which, the Shark Swim Club is based in Leisureland in Galway. We'd have a summer break and everyone would go across to the diving tower in Blackrock. There used to be a raft just off the diving tower. It's replaced by the buoys now, which entice people to go a little bit further. So that was where I started going to the sea. But really, it was when I was in college that I started swimming through the winter as well. And that was nearly a bit of a bravado thing in 2010 when we had the big freeze and a few of us were like, we'll still get in the sea anyway. But I realized I really liked the cold water aspect of it. So I think when you get in the winter, it gives you a bit more confidence about what you can do in the summer and how far you can go. But really it was in 2012 when I did the first Galway Bay swim. So I would have grown up swimming with Kevin Thornton and Ronan Collins, and it was actually Ronan Collins who encouraged me. I kind of needed him to say, you're going to do the Galway Bay swim. I always wanted to do it, but I thought they were up there and I was down here. And because I was an average pool swimmer, I just kind of got through it, wouldn't have been winning medals, just loved it, loved the community of it, felt I fitted in with it. So in 2012, I was training for the Galway Bay swim. I had kind of completed my army training, done a triathlon while I was a cadet, and that I felt like I could do the open water, but it was the 2012 swim is where I really kind of faced the fears of, like just getting your head down and swimming through it and getting the distance and the hours up that you needed. And that 2012 crossing, I did it in a wetsuit, and it was one of the bad years, and it took me about 5.5 hours, and I hated it, and I was like, never doing that again. But then I went on a holiday in Croatia in 2013, and I realised how different it could be when you can see the bottom. There's fish in the water to look at, the water's warm, and you're not wearing a wetsuit. And since I came back from that holiday, I suppose I've had those experiences in Ireland as well, to see how beautiful the Irish coastline is. It's a really unique view. You don't get it walking the prom, you get a different view when you're in the water.
And that moment where you built up the courage then to just take this on further and extend on to further distances and further challenges, some of which I've described to you.
Yeah, that came from, again, it's encouragement from people for me all the time. It was Cliff Golding, is a renowned channel character, I would say, rather than a channel swimmer. He took 7 attempts to get across. He relayed the Frida Dover experience to me through his mentorship. And it was on a swim camp before I went back to do the Galway Bay swim in 2016 in skins, which means you're swimming in just a swimsuit, not a wetsuit. So I went and did a training camp with, it was actually with Swim Trek, who Cliff was a guide for, and there was one swim that was particularly nasty. Usually when you go on a swimming holiday, the guides will pick the nicest stretch of water for you, and you know, you won't get it. We'll drive around, I guide now myself, you'll drive around in the boat beforehand and check that there's not too many jellyfish or anything like that there, because you want the swimmers who've paid all the money to have the lovely experience. You don't want them to come and have a horrible swim, you want them to come back. But this day, the only option was a lumpy swim with a lot of jellyfish, and the jellyfish just came in, and people were getting onto the boat, and I looked at Cliff, I was like, why are they all getting into the boat? Why? Just swim through them, they're not even that bad. And Cliffy stood up in the boat and he was like, Dee Dee, you are nails, you will swim the channel. And I was like, Cliffy said it, I'll swim the channel. You know, and that's really where it came from. Then came back to Galway and did the Galway Bay swim and had a lovely experience. It was a lovely year, and my swim was less than 4 hours, and you know, I was in like a shiny bikini, like a shiny purple bikini, as Mark Braun, and my army colleague who did the boat, likes to remind everyone about. So yeah, when I came in, you know, I was delighted, was warm, wasn't unable to speak at the end of it, so it was a very different experience, and I think that was the moment where I was like, this can actually be enjoyable. It can not just be hardship.
You're the first person ever to be transformed for the better by your encounter with jellyfish. Listening to Dee, like, she's hardcore, right? She's actually quite intimidating, I have found. But I think the important thing to remember is it started just with casual community swimming here in Galway, building on it, and engaging with other people for advice.
And with people, like, I wouldn't have persevered with the 2012 training, only I was, the reason I put my head down and wanted to keep going with that was because if I didn't keep swimming, I'd lose the pack, you know? So that's what pushes you on, is the people that you train with.
We'll talk a little bit more later on about the community and culture. Now, that's the lure of the sea as a physical activity. The lure of the sea as a literary subject. Can you talk about that, Rebecca, please? And could you please tell me about the moment where you decided to take on your endurance sport, which is translating this novel?
Yeah, sure, very happy to. So I guess the sea's kind of always been there for me in a way that I hadn't reflected on particularly for most of my life. So I was born in West Cork, and my parents are from Brighton. And one of the reasons that they moved over was my dad loves sea fishing. So he got a job with Met Éireann, and the sea and the weather, I guess, really accompanied my childhood. And all our holidays were sort of camping at the beach in West Clare or Cork, or going to Brighton. But I hadn't particularly thought that was massively important until I went away and started doing my more academic self and went to Oxford and studied languages. And Oxford is the furthest you can get from the sea. As my dad ruefully said, he said, I hear the sea fishing's pretty rubbish in Oxford. And I guess I was never particularly, I mean, I was fantastically happy there doing my learning, but not particularly happy in it as an environment. It's quite humid in the summer. You miss any kind of sea breeze. But I hadn't particularly thought about the sea being important, and I went away and did all of my academic work, and was researching a book on authorship in Germany, so understanding the kind of the current publishing scene, how it works, what drives people, and was doing a lot of interviewing of contemporary writers, which was how I met Ulrike Draesner. and actually found myself in her flat, and she put into my hand her 2019 book, Kanalschwimmer, and I started reading it, and I was totally gripped. Totally gripped. I knew like lots of her other work, which is entirely German and often tends to be long German novels, which I understood with my German side of my brain and my German head. But I found myself reading this pacey novel that's actually about somebody who is a scientist in Oxford, decides to swim the Channel, and it's a very English book in some ways. And I was kind of like, this was just mind-blowing for me. I was like, you know, it's a really German experience. I'm in Berlin with one of the authors I really admire. I'm reading a natural next step in her work. I could see how it fitted in, but it's also brought the sea totally to the fore of my consciousness. And I just thought, this book needs a life in English. This main character, Charles, we need to give him back his English voice, because actually most of the characters are English in the book. So I found this incredibly interesting, that she'd created a really authentic, fantastic piece of German literature, and yet it was actually building on a really English experience. So I just said to her that morning, I was like, that book needs to be translated. And it's maybe important to know that Ulrike is a really well-established female writer in Germany. She's probably at the fore of her generation, and has won all sorts of prizes. She's had some of her poetry translated into English, but never her novels. And I thought, this is the novel to carry your work into English. So I said, that book needs to be translated. And then I didn't realize I was kind of saying this, and I was like, by me. Which I think is where the sea comes back into it, that it was just really hitting something kind of profoundly personal for me as well.
And poor old Charles in the book now has a tough old time. And in some ways, I said this to Dee earlier on, so I hope I'm sure she won't take it as seriously. In some ways, this fictional character is more human than Dee Newell when you hear about some of the things you can answer. So we're touching on the sea as both something that we can have a very strong physical, but also an emotional connection with, okay? And that comes through in the book, and I'm hoping it'll come through now, Dee, in giving you the opportunity perhaps to speak about that side of your sea swimming, okay? How would you describe the feeling of being in open water? What does it do for your body? What does it do for your mind? Because you spend hours in it, right?
Yeah. It's a settler, so you'll have a lot of people, especially like a lot of people got into swimming during COVID, and they found like a dip in the sea is a reset button. You'll have heard that a lot of times. Yep. I could never really identify with a dip in the sea being a reset button, because I needed about 2 hours in the sea to be a reset button, you know, and I think that's just because I was a swimmer. I have a load of enjoyment for the dip in the sea, because I have dip friends that you'll go, and the dip and the coffee is, you know, that's what you need from it. But for me, it's the longer swims. It's nearly like the first stretch of your swim is getting over something, and then you settle into it. You know, that by the time the dippers have gotten out, I'm only getting into it. And it's like I'll often say to people, you know, everyone dreams for their long swims that they have a flat, calm day and lovely conditions. But in hindsight, when you look back, I'm always grateful for the bad conditions I've gotten, because your mind turns off a little bit more. When you've the lovely, flat, calm day, that's when all the gremlins come in. Whereas if you've a bit of a rough day in the sea, you're thinking about, is this going to calm down? Should I be breathing more to one side than the other? There's loads of other things. So it becomes more of a survival mode maybe, or a bit of an out-of-body experience. So like, I think that's the big difference between it and pool swimming. Pool swimming, you always have the same conditions, unless you have a few dodgy breaststrokers in your lane that you want to fight with. But, you know, the sea is unpredictable, and you never know what you're going to get. And you can swim in the same place every day. Like, I know there's people here in the audience that I'm sure have swam with dolphins in Galway Bay that you're like, you never get dolphins in Galway Bay. But occasionally this summer, I know dolphins have come close to swimmers, you know, and over the years that has happened. But it's, you know, and it's different experiences. It's even like different jellyfish coming in, or what height are the jellyfish at? Because when the jellyfish are low enough down that you can see them, they're very beautiful. It's just when they're a bit closer to the surface, which is usually on the calm days, that they'll cause the damage. So yeah, it's the different experience. And like, I've gone on a lot of swimming holidays as well, where you'll swim and you'll see I couldn't tell you the bars in a town, but I could tell you what the coastline looks like, you know, and I think that's a really nice thing. And it's swimming you'll always do in a group, you'll always have loads of support. Like I wouldn't have done any of my long swims without a crew, but it's still very much an individual situation in that it's you alone with your thoughts, and it's what happens with the thoughts. 9 times out of 10 for me, I'm not thinking that much. My mind races a lot on land. I was actually very happy to see my teacher from, from national school for my last 4 years of national school. She could probably attest to me being a little bit of a buzzy kid, getting separated from my friends and chatting all the time, whereas the swimming is something that pulls me down from that, you know, that it just makes me a bit calmer and calmer for the rest of the day.
And how are you managing now that you're on the crutches?
Oh, I'm a pro crutcher. I can race everyone. It is a bit of a, like I knit, I kind of try, and I've gotten Lego and stuff, so I am trying to do stuff, but I've loads of, like I'm back home in Galway, I'm like a teenager. I left Galway when I was just turned 18 and I went off and joined the army, and I haven't lived back in Galway since. You know, I haven't lived at home. So it's like I've reverted to teenage life. I'm like, can I have a lift somewhere? But no, I have great friends, like, you know, always willing to pick me up and bring me places and do stuff.
I'd kind of like to be there at the moment when you get back into the sea. So
Yeah,
hopefully
I know.
we're hoping later in August. Yeah, maybe we can all get together and send you on your way. Rebecca, you obviously spent a lot of time with this book. Did the experience of investing so much time and energy in translating this, did this change your appreciation of the sea or your connection with the sea yourself?
That's a really good question. I think yes, in as much as I said, I hadn't particularly reflected on the importance of the sea until I found myself really wanting to translate this novel. And, you know, it takes a long time to translate a novel, not just actually to translate the words from German to English and get the whole thing coherent, but to get the project. So there were a couple of years after 2019 where I was like trying to find a publisher, trying to, you know, doing the pitch and finding my way in that world. And it's surprisingly, it's not very surprising when you think about it, but a German book that's actually about an English subject, like all the English publishers are like, well, we have some of those already. So I had to do some sort of smart thinking around how am I actually going to get this book to find its, well, to convince the publishers that this book was worth adding to all the other English language books about, you know, swimming around England or generally a more English experience. So I guess in that sense, when it actually came that I had the contract and it was worth translating the entire manuscript, because I'd done bits and pieces as part of the various pitches, but when I had the white smoke, as it were, and I started translating, I was quite a different person. It was no longer 2019. I had moved over here. I had a different job, and you know, it didn't come at a particularly great time. And I was suddenly trying to fit in translating this novel into a very different set of circumstances. But the one very significant thing that had changed was, of course, I was here. I had discovered Black Rock. My sister is actually the real sea swimmer in my family, and she had been so excited when we moved over that she introduced my entire family, my kids, not quite my husband. He's a little bit less keen. But you know, to the idea of swimming. So I started doing more swimming around about the same time as I properly started doing the translating, and that was very serendipitous. So I would say that I kind of started to build up my understanding of what it means to swim in the sea as I was chomping my way through the manuscript. And I had a period last September where I ended up swimming every day for most of September, and it was very kind of helpful. I was working through something quite difficult with one of my kids, and I ended up with an hour to kill every morning. And I went and I started swimming. I kind of did it backwards, actually. I have no idea whether this is a smart idea or not, but I'd noticed when you swim from Black Rock down the buoys, the problem is it's harder on the way back. So I went down the other end and swum up so that then it would be easier going back down again. Because I'm a total wimp. All the time in the sea, I'm basically thinking, am I going to drown? You know, am I getting tired? Am I getting too cold? So I had to kind of tease myself along. And one of the things that's really well done in the book is the verbs are really important about how things are described. And the word spüren comes up a lot, which means, I had translated it roughly as feel. And when I was pulling the whole manuscript together, I was like, there's a lot more to spüren than just feel. And it comes up when it's describing how Charles is in the water. And it's much more all senses, so what he's sensing around him. And I think I realized as I was swimming every day in September just what that meant, that you are swimming with every bit of your body, and that sense of being in the water, it's so different to being on land. And I do think that's really well captured in the novel. We'll
hear an excerpt in a little bit. One common theme, both of you, is you're both into endurance sports. You in the case of long-distance swimming, and you in the case of long-distance translation. We discovered that in the 16 hours it took Dee to cross the channel, she would have translated 20 pages. Just 20 pages, 16 hours? Okay. So this is, you know, the endurance mentality requires your brain to get your body through the really difficult bits. And you've had some real challenges out in the water, okay? Yeah. You've had some really good swims, you've had some really tough swims. And I know that you draw upon, in particular, meditation to kind of get your brain right, to get your brain to pull your body through those bits where your body physically it's too exerted. Could you talk about that process, that connection between mind and body to get you through? Yeah,
so like the meditation played a really big part for my 2019 English Channel crossing, and how that came about. Infinity are the North Channel piloting company, so that's who you book your channel with to do the North Channel, and they run Hit the Wall is a training camp that they run at the end of May every year, and they offer a 10-hour swim. So to swim the channel, you must swim a 6-hour swim in particular conditions depending on what channel you're doing, so for the temperature. So for the English Channel, it's under 16 degrees. The Infinity group offered this 10-hour swim, which was an older qualifier for the English Channel, because as things progressed, English Channel times got shorter. So the record on the channel at one point was 7:55. So I think it was at that point that they pulled the qualifier swim back to 6 hours rather than 10 hours, because they had the situation where someone had done a 10-hour swim to qualify to do it, but actually swam it in less the time. But I knew I was kind of going to be a 16-hour-ish swimmer. I ended up being faster at the time, but I really thought I needed to have a 10-hour swim in me. Went to do the 10-hour swim in Carlingford. Carlingford at that time was about 12 degrees because they're more orientated to the North Channel, which is colder water. I felt great when I was swimming. I did the first hour and a half and then my hips locked up. And I was like, at 4.5 hours, I was like, I just need to get out. They were trying to keep me on to do 6 hours. So if I had done 6 hours on that day, I would have been qualified for the North Channel as well. It was a blessing in disguise, because had I qualified, I probably would have had a fire to go and do the North Channel in the same season as the English Channel, which in hindsight wouldn't have been wise. So anyway, I touched the boat at 4.5 hours. Now, in a qualifier swim, you're allowed to touch the boat, but when I touched the boat, that's when Jacqueline was like, okay, she really needs to get out. So I got out, and I wasn't thinking too much about it, because Cliff had sent me the training program that he followed for his successful year of the English Channel. And on that same weekend, at the same time, you know, on the same timeline of when I was going to swim, he had done a 3-hour and a 4-hour swim. So in that weekend, I had done more than a 3-hour and a 4-hour swim back to back. So I was actually fairly settled with it. But Andrea, my friend, was really bothered that I had failed at the 10-hour. And she thought this was going to fester in my brain. So she got me in touch with a guy that we had met on a previous swim camp, who's a chiropractor, and he does loads of meditation. So we went and met him, and he did a group meditation with us, and he recorded some meditations for me. And the one that I felt I needed the most was the change meditation. So it was an hour where he had split it into 3 different parts. So a non-swimmer, or just, you know, a normal person getting through their day who might not get through their day very well, you could say, I wake up and have breakfast, and what you're doing is you're changing your attitude to life. Then midday, and then the afternoon. So what I did was, the English Channel is, you start at England, you go into the 2 different shipping lanes, and there's a separation zone between that. And then you get into French waters, and then you hope that you land in France. A lot of people will get to French waters, and then something happens that they need to get back on the boat. So what I had, my kind of mantras for it were the change meditation. Every time I did the change meditation, it was getting in the water. Don't be nervous, feel happy that you've had the opportunity, because so many people do all the work, they pay the money, something happens, and they don't get to go. There's so many things that can happen on a channel. Then the next point for me was the separation zone. You know, that's kind of roughly the halfway point. Change the feeling sorry for yourself and starting to feel tired, excited that you're in the separation zone. And then for me, the French waters was, my mantra really for that swim was swim to the start line, because there was a girl I had been training with, and she had 2 experiences where at that point she had gotten back on the boat, and I had watched every tracker nearly for the whole summer, and I saw that that's where things happen. There's things like there's currents there, number 1, but it can also be psychological, that when you're swimming you want to get to Cap Grenez, which is the closest point to England, but a lot of times you'll miss Cap Grenez. If you miss Cap Grenez, you're talking about probably another hour and a half of swimming to get to the beach somewhere along Wissant. Whereas I also had a different view on that, because Cliff had, you know, when he gave us a talk about the English Channel, and his thought process on it basically was, I thought I'd land on the French beach and the local mayor would be down to meet me, and you know, there'd be all these people around, and in the end that's basically what I got. So I wanted to land in Wissant because I had watched a video of David Williams when he did the English Channel, I think it was in the 90s, and he was trying and failing to climb up on these rocks. And on the English Channel, you have to clear your toes have to get on dry land that is attached to the mainland. Like, you can't just land on a rock and climb up on that. It has to be, so you have to scramble up. And I was like, after all that swimming, I don't know if my arms will work. So I landed on Wissant at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon after starting at 1 a.m. in the morning. Loads of people on the beach, people were sunbathing, and there was the local channel people had come down, were taking pictures. My friend Gavin was on the crew, and he turned around, I was putting my email address into someone's phone to get the pictures, and he's like, how can you do this? And I wanted to do a handstand, but I was afraid I'd fall over. So I I pulled my leg up in the photo, because I was like, I'm so fine, everything is fine, you know, and it was so fine. But I was like a little swollen sausage. But anyway, yeah, so I do put it, and like even when I look back at the English Channel, I'm like, the English Channel was so great. And I put those real positive memories and thoughts down to all the meditation that I did in the lead up to it. Because I was preparing for something else and looking back at photos, and I was like, well, I don't look great in them pictures. But that's not my memory of it, because, you know, I was like very positive in my mind about it. Whereas when I went to do the North Channel in 2023, I didn't do as much meditation. I kind of jammed it in at the very last minute. And I don't think I had that armor of, you know, positivity. Although I did in that swim get into, you know, I felt like I was feeding every hour, and I was like, why are they calling me in every 5 minutes? Like, the time was going somewhere else. But because I did so much work for the English Channel, I think it's filtered into normal life now, and swimming is a meditation in itself nearly.
You do seem very chill.
I'm very chill.
Okay.
On the outside.
This is why I think Charles in your book is more human than, okay. You can swim across to France and do a handstand. But anyway, so I want you to pick up the book, please, Rebecca, because one beautiful thing about Ulrike's writing is that she's inside Charles's head, and as the readers, then so are we. But through the language, like it's very disjointed style. You can tell that his mind is racing. He's also going through kind of a marital crisis at the time as well. So Maud's name is his wife. But so he's flicking between reality and time, going back and reflecting, and using mantras to get himself back in rhythm. And I just want to give us a taste of what that's like in prose, that trying to capture that kind of inner mental turmoil or challenge to keep the body going. I should say that Maud is the wife and Henry is the name of the boat. I think that's going to be in the excerpt.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Okay, away with you.
Yeah, thanks. He swam, and nothing changed. The water kept on carrying him. The water kept on pushing him back. The water kept on contradicting itself and only giving the impression of carrying. It lied. It gnawed. It weighed down on him. In this respect, it was like Maud. Single rhythm, swim, 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 swimming, 2 beats. Well, well, well. Well, hell, swell. Looking up to his left on a breath, he could see the guillotine smoothness of the Henry's side lifting itself up out of the water on every 6th syllable. Nothing else happened. The captain's deck was full of instruments for measuring things. They resembled egg boxes for a battery of crazy Easter bunnies or a dentist's forceps for enormous teeth. Minute by minute, the correct route was traced on top of his actual one. The red lifeboat in the stern swung on its hook from left to right and back again. Nothing else happened. Oh, he was an idiot. A contented idiot. Swim, swam, swum. Sick as a dog, green at the gills. All the brochures tell you your body starts burning fat. Accurate rubbish. His body had started eating his bones, his tendons, his nerves. His body was eating itself up. So something was happening after all. And then nothing happened for another while. His legs had gone. The arms were still there. So, was the glass half empty or half full? The channel was full. And his glass of life? Even if the wrong side of 60 could hardly count as half anymore. Tick, tack, tock. The answer came to him in a flash. The glass was half full. What else? Half full, with emptiness.
Well done. Thanks, Rebecca. We're getting that, yeah, we're getting inside the brain, right? Now, I do want to talk about the Galway swimming community here, as I can tell lots of members here today. You've been involved in swimming groups for years, but you've also been supported and sustained by peers throughout your endurance swimming career. How does the culture of sea swimming here, how does it support and sustain itself? And is there something different about Galway? I know you've swam in different places.
Yeah, there is, because Galway, like, you'll have all the different people who go at all the different times, and everyone kind of knows each other. You can cross into other groups if you want as well. My friend Andrea, she did the Galway Bay swim with me in 2016, when she came over, ahead of the Galway Bay swim, she said she was absolutely like, jaw hit the floor when she landed in Blackrock. She's like, she lived in Australia, in Bondi. She's like, I've never seen anything like this since Australia. And that's like, it was the Australian community that got her into swimming. And she's like, we don't have this in the UK. We don't, like, I've not seen this anywhere else. And I'm just like, yeah, it's just the way it is. It's like Galway, But I think, like, Leisureland being located where it is with all the swimming clubs, and then, the fact that you can just walk across the road as kids, it's very safe. The prom, you're never really going to be too dangerous going along the prom. I think, like, a pivotal turning point for people in Galway with distance was the Yellow Boys, because you would have had a lot of people who would have swam over and back to the raft. You'd go, like, the first rocks, the second rocks, or whatever, but I think once the boys went in, there was the people who were like, if I just swim to the first buoy, like, that'll be great. And then they do that a few times and they get confidence, and then someone might come along with them and say, sure, will we just try the second buoy today? And then before they know it, by the end of the summer, they'll have swam to Parmaries, which is the next kind of, it's where the Wild Atlantic Way sign is, on the prom across from Coco. That's a significant swim. Like, that's a 2K swim when you go from the Tower to Parmaries. And I would always say to people, people are often like, oh, you swam the channel and that's amazing, and I don't think I could do that. But I'm like, if you can swim to Parmaries and back, you can add on that really easily. Like, I think the first K of anything is the hard bit, and then it's just about knowing what to do and having the right people around you. And I think we're really lucky in Galway that we have that. Like, we've Paddy sitting in the front row there who keeps a record of the temperature all year round and will openly divulge as much information as possible. Like, last year I was trying to organise a Galway Bay swim. I can't even remember who it was for, but, like, I'm asking Paddy, what time do you reckon I should go, or should we go from Auchinish to Galway, or should we go the other way around? And it's just the soundness of people that no one's holding things back. It's everyone, you want to see people using the sea. and you want people to do well, and you want people to do more swims, and you know, you want it all to be as good as it can be, because if you don't have, like, you look at the Heskin League on a Thursday night, that's like a big swimming league. It runs all through the summer. It's a 1.3 kilometre swim, and I was there 2 weeks ago, and someone was saying, you know, it's really grown, and like, there's loads of people wearing wetsuits at it, which if you went back a few years, wetsuits wouldn't have been allowed in there. But like, I think it's the realization of, if we don't let people wear wetsuits, we won't have the people taking part. So let people wear whatever they want, go, and you know, and it's much better to have more people, because if you've got a nice big event like that, then the conditions around Blackrock, you'll get grants, you'll get, you know, you'll be able to build on what you have and just have all around better facilities. So yeah, I think, like, the community, it's just they have the right attitude, and it's a can-do attitude, and it's a helpful attitude, and that makes a world of difference.
This is Paddy now, who's in the morning taking the temperatures of the sea and sending it around through WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Yes, I've heard of your exploits, Paddy. Well done on behalf of all of us. And now that paints a very cosy, safe community feel.
Yeah.
But of course, the sea in literature and life is also full of danger and risk. And we know, sadly, too well about that here in Galway.
Yeah.
The force of the sea and its impact, its tragic impacts here locally. I'll turn to you, Dee, in a moment to talk about how you get your head around some of the real, like, physical challenges now of what you do. But Rebecca, just in terms of the book, how in the writing about the sea has the author kind of heightened that tension about kind of the danger and the risk?
Yeah, well, in a number of ways, to be honest. So the passage I read out just now is kind of a little atypical in as much as it keeps stressing nothing happened, because there are many passages within the novel where things certainly do happen. So that's the first thing, is it's amazing how eventful you can make swimming turn out to be. Well, I thought it was amazing anyway. So there are concrete incidents within the plot which are kind of exciting, where you're like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? But beyond that, there's overall, I mean, one of the reasons I sat up all night and read the book first time round was you just want to know, will he make it? And because, as you've been intimating, John, Charles is not obviously going to make it. He's somebody who's come at swimming later in life. He's doing it because he's working through personal difficulties. He hasn't come from a really strong swimming community. He's like a man who's got an idea in his head, and you kind of wish him well, but you don't feel very confident that he's actually going to make it. So there is that kind of page turner of, well, is he going to make it? And each time one of these, misfortunes crops up on his swim, you're like, oh, what's going to happen now? And actually the book works fantastically well with that sense of not knowing what's going to happen, and the fear of failure, and the fact that it's not will things go wrong, it's things will go wrong. You know things will go wrong, which I think is probably quite true to life as well. So when things go wrong, what will you do next? And the book actually has an amazingly open ending. So, and Ulrike has spoken about how she knew how to get Charles into the sea, but she wasn't too sure how to get him out again. And it was one of the reasons it took her a very long time to write the book, she kind of had it with her over a 10-year period. And in the end, she sort of resolved it by kind of intimating there are multiple different outcomes.
Spoiler alert now.
No. So I think I can say that without spoiling, without it really being a spoiler, because one of the amazing things about the book is people read it and they're like, in my experience anyway, they're like, oh, well, I know what happened, and they've chosen one of the endings. So it's like
we had an argument about this earlier.
Yeah, each person resolves that tension in their own way, and I think that's something that's really clever about the way she structured her narrative.
I'm going to turn to the audience now in a couple of minutes, but I just want you to speak, if you don't mind, about, as I said, it was tantalisingly close how you got to across the North Channel, which is the gap of water between, let's say, Antrim and Scotland. Am I right? Yeah. Can you talk about the real County Down, beg your pardon. Can you talk about the real danger associated with the swimming?
Yeah, so like in the North Channel, you've got a lot of lion's mane jellyfish. If you get a lot of stings, they build up toxicity in your body, so your kidneys can stop working, basically. You also have colder water temperatures, so your body will go into hypothermia. Then if you're really lucky, on top of all that, you might get a bit of sunburn and have something else to play with, but I didn't get sunburn. But yeah, I had such a positive experience with the English Channel. My military training tells me that you keep going until the mission is complete, and my brain doesn't know how to do anything else. So I was swimming for 14 hours. I was actually, my pilot, Pádraig Mallon, he thought that I was going to beat his time, and they were joking on the boat through the swim, saying I'm going to have to get her doing laps of the harbour so that she's not faster than me, because I was on course to swim it in about 11 and a half hours. It would be a dream for me to do the North Channel in 12 hours, but I know I'm a 12 to 16 hour swimmer for it. So anyway, everything went wrong kind of around the 10-hour mark. I was feeding every hour, so I needed to have more feeds than that on board. It was the first thing for the North Channel with the colder water, but I was also getting all these jellyfish stings. I hadn't peed from 4 hours, and I hadn't told the crew that, because like he mentions, you're getting pushed back all the time. I wasn't able to pee on the move, but I should have just stopped and really tried to pee, or I should have told my crew I wasn't peeing, and they could have given me some tea that would have been a bit diuretic on my body and made me go. So what that happened then was it caused my lungs to go into difficulty, so I was wheezing, not able to breathe. I could feel myself sinking. And a month previous in the English Channel, a channel swimmer had drowned, and everybody has the question, how did that swimmer drown? You have a whole crew looking at them. Me and my lifeguard guiding all the rest of the background. I know that if someone is swimming for a long time and they're drowning, you just slip away, you drop down, because you don't have the ability to float anymore because you're absorbing water into your body. I knew that was happening to me before anyone said anything, but my brain couldn't switch because you're so long in your own senses. So that's 14 hours of swimming and the rhythm and just breathe. So I wasn't able to have the presence of mind to say, I need to get on the boat. Pádraig said to me, you're done. You need to get on the boat. And I was like, I know. I do think I answered him and said, I know. But I turned and I swam away. And I think they stopped me 3 times. I only remember the first time being told I was done. I was told another 2 times I was done. They put a swimmer in the water with me. They put the boat in front of me. I don't know how I was brought onto the boat, but my next memory is being fully dressed, oxygen mask on my face, sitting upright, and I was like, but we're not in Scotland. So, and that's what can happen. And like, there's a whole series of like thoughts and feelings and everything after that. But it's scary that, it's scary that you can get that close and not, and that's why the crew is so important. They need to know when to pull you. But I could, as much as I was very well prepared for it, factors kind of changed to make it not happen. But like I could really identify with, a lot of the ending of, of how Charles's swim was going and the feeling of never getting there. Whereas for me, it was never an option of not getting there. I didn't think it was possible. But then I learned, you don't have to finish every swim.
Thanks for sharing that. The important thing is dare to begin, right?
Dare to begin. That's the motto of the Infinity, and it is a really good one.
Okay. Folks, any questions from the audience here? Yes, we have a hand here. I think there's a roving microphone.
Yeah.
Sharks. Is it true that the crutches are because of a shark?
No, sharks got mentioned. Was South Africa, was it?
Yeah.
How do they keep you safe from sharks?
So when I swam in 2019, I did the swim from Robben Island. So that would have been my first experience of sharky water. And they had a device that sends out a frequency to make the sharks not come near the boat. So I felt very comfortable doing that swim knowing that that device was on. And then when we finished the swim, they were like, did you notice we didn't put it in till halfway because we forgot? And I was like, well, I noticed that the black thing only went in halfway through, but I thought that was a design process. So that was 2019, and on that same trip, they brought me to False Bay, and we looked across, and I was like, oh, I want to do that swim. At that point, only 5 people had done it, but also in 2019, 2 orcas came into False Bay, and they were killing the sharks, eating their livers, and basically driving the population out. So when I went back this year, I was the 48th swimmer to do that False Bay crossing. So like loads of people had done it. But it's funny, I don't really think about it. And I was saying, loads and loads of dolphins came around me at one point. There was an hour and a half, and I was like, there was like probably 40 or 50 dolphins all swimming around me. And I do think your mind plays tricks with you. This was about the 4-hour mark in the swim, so my mind should still have been pretty fresh. But I kind of thought, oh, I think there could be something bigger underneath there, but I wasn't one bit worried about it. It was just like, oh, that's something, because I felt I'm where I'm meant to be. But yeah, people did say to me afterwards that dolphin behaviour is classic, that they're keeping you safe from a shark type situation. But to be honest, like the shark population in False Bay has gone, like it's not what it used to be. You know, it used to be the place you went to see them breaching, whereas like the sightings and the tourist element where they want to draw people in who are interested in sharks will probably still say it's the most populated bay in South Africa, but it's actually not. Plus, I always feel very safe that there's a boat beside me and I can just get on the boat and that they'll pull me off quickly onto the boat. But I made a really big mistake of looking at sharks breaching in False Bay before I did the swim, and it's literally like a seal and a shark fully out of the water, so I was like, you wouldn't really stand a chance. But yeah.
I felt at the start of this talk we were kind of encouraging those people. You had to ask about the sharks, didn't you? Okay, any more questions, folks?
Fish are friends.
Any other hands in the audience? Oh, what, James? Yeah, maybe, yeah.
How close do you live to water?
I'm far away from water, really. Like, Currandulla is where I'm from. That's Loch Corrib would be the local spot back in Annadown, and I would have gone back there as a kid, but like Salt Hill was always where I would go. But my mum would always walk the pram. She says now, like when I think about it, she'd leave me at Blackrock. I'd be jumping off the tower. I'd be doing everything, and you know, she looks at the way Blackrock is so busy now, and she's like, anything could have happened, yeah. You know, when she's walking the pram and I'm in the water. But I suppose we just like. It is so safe there. And now I work in Dublin. I'm in shift work, but I've moved to Bangor, County Down in the last few years to train for the North Channel. And I am like 4 minutes from the swim spot that we go to on a Sunday, you know, the most regular swim spot that we go to. And that's the reason I'm there, really, because it's the right temperature and the right distance.
She's moved home to be near the next swim that she wants to achieve. Okay. Shout out also to the lake swimmers. You mentioned, yes, it's not all about sea swimming. No. And I want to particularly do a shout out to my friend Emer, who swims all throughout the year in a female group of lake swimmers in North Roscommon. The name of the group is the Blue Tits, which I think is probably a very fitting one. Okay, I've got any more questions in the room? Yes, up the front here, please. Tips for jellyfish stings, that was the question.
So
learn to love the jellyfish.
Learn to love the jellyfish. Yeah, no, I do learn to love the jellyfish. If they're really bad, I will sometimes wear long sleeve swimsuits. You know, if you know you need to get, you know, they're kind of good for about an hour or 2 hour swim that you don't get too much chafing, but it'll build up your confidence around them that you'll be able to settle a little bit more into the swim. But lion's mane jellyfish, they studied the best treatment for a lion's mane, even though we don't get as many of them in Galway, but the study was done in Galway. And what you do for a lion's mane is the big fluffy brown one that gives you the bad stings. Get heat on it straight away and white vinegar. So that's the best treatment for that. Whereas a compass jellyfish, which is the round one with the kind of cross, like a brown cross on the top and kind of long tentacles from it, they would be common enough here, and the best treatment for them is just stay in the water longer, you know, just stay for a little bit long. Seawater will do a lot for that. There used to be a thought process of scraping off the venom, but that can actually cause it to burst and give you a worse burn on you. But some people, you know, obviously if you've never been stung before, like people can have worse reactions to it. So some people will need the medical, like actual medical care after them. But it's about identifying what's there. The moon jellyfish don't sting at all. You know, the little kind of jelly ones that have the purple cross.
Purpley thing, yeah.
Yeah, so it's about like knowledge and knowing what's good, what's bad.
So they're grand, the purpley ones. Good.
Yeah.
My extensive experience of sea swimming this summer, I came across quite a lot of those. So I'll embrace them, literally the next time I see them. Any more questions, folks? Oh, sorry, and then we'll go to that later. Yes.
The author of the book, what was her experience with the sea?
None. Which is also fascinating. So she hasn't done sea swimming herself, but she did a huge amount of research. So she really went and you know, found out the swimming community in Dover, and you know, really immersed herself in what they do. And she told me that she had like copious notes that she'd put together, which were mostly in English. She's a fluent English speaker as well. So there's actually like a patchwork of voices and experiences that have gone into the novel. And I think I could probably sense that when I was translating it back into English, that she's really captured a very authentic kind of whole community's understanding of the activity. But you know, she kind of joked with me that she wanted to write the novel so that she didn't actually have to go into the sea herself.
And then we have this lady here, please. Thank you.
I've just recently moved here from the US, primarily
Welcome.
because of the Orange Monster. So on behalf of most of us who did not vote for him, I want to say I'm so sorry. But because I'm newly here, I'm wondering, and wondering when summer's going to begin.
It was Tuesday there last week.
I'm also wondering when it's going to become necessary to need a wetsuit. What time of year? Like by what time this year would I need a wetsuit?
No, strong opinion alert, yeah.
Yeah, no, there's people who'll wear wetsuits during the summer, so it kind of depends on what you're used to and how often you're swimming. Like you could find that you just keep swimming in your swimsuit. Like I don't change into a wetsuit in the summer or in the winter. I just shorten my distance and time in the sea. I have a friend who will only wear a wetsuit in the summer because of jellyfish, but will not wear a wetsuit in the winter because you're not swimming for long enough that you want to go through the faff of getting it off and washing it and all the rest of it. Ian, who co-hosts the podcast with me, I am amazed that he will swim a kilometre in a wetsuit in the winter, but he will still only swim a kilometre in skins in the summer. So, you know, that you have a variety of people, and it just depends on how you feel in the water and how comfortable you are and what it is that your goals are. But Paddy, who's up the front, can give temperature advice anyway. So
How do you get onto Paddy's WhatsApp group? That's what I want to know. Come to Paddy afterwards. But you would be a strong proponent for skins, this new term for all of us, swimming togs essentially, just for experiencing.
Yeah, I hate wetsuits, and whenever anything is like around my neck, I'll puke, and when my shoulders are restricted, like I was surfing one day and I had like a hood that was a bit too tight and I projectile vomited getting changed, so I was like, it's not a good idea. So, and I have a sleeveless wetsuit for if I'm doing something that you have to wear a wetsuit, because I find I can swim better when my shoulders are out.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, and we've one last one here, please. Thank you.
I'd just like to give a mention to one of our Blackrock swimmers, Darren Morgan, who's swimming around Ireland at the moment.
Yes.
He started Maybank holiday weekend and he is up near Malin Head at the moment. He's going a bomb. He's been swimming about 6 hours a day, and fair play to him. And if you want to follow him, he's on Swim Era on Instagram or on Facebook. But he's one of our lads from Blackrock, young lad.
He left in May, and did he go up the way or down?
Yeah, he's swimming up the way. He's done the Mayo Coast and he's crossed Donegal Bay.
He's got a long way to go, yes.
He's a long way to go, but the thing with Dara, he wanted to do this in about 2 months. He had crew lined up, people let him down, and it's just a testament to the swimmer cannot do anything without the crew. So even like I'd say, rather than just say, Dara is great and look at what he's doing, if anyone has access to, if anyone is a pilot, if anyone has a boat, if you can help him in any way, he would really appreciate that, and that'll help him keep going on his journey around Ireland, because he can't do it without help.
Thank you. Well done, sir, for that shout.
Thank you.
Okay, we might draw the questions to a close there, folks. I suppose I want to welcome our new Galwegian from the States. I hope you're inspired to join the swimming. We are blessed in Galway to have the water there on our doorstep. It comes as a blessing. It feels like a blessing most days. Sometimes, sadly, feels like a curse other days. You know, during the Atlantic storms and the force of nature that it is often. You'll experience that when you've lived here for the winter. But the wonderful thing with the explosion of sea swimming, propelled by COVID, it appears to me so much, is that it has reconnected us land livers to the sea. And people are now more aware and understanding of the flows of the tide, the features of the coast, the biodiversity of the seas, whether they're welcome or not, and also our understanding of its power to enhance our well-being, right, as people who live by the coast. I might like to turn to you, Rebecca. You have a short excerpt from the book that I think encapsulates that kind of magic of the sea, and I thought maybe we might just finish on a few paragraphs from the book. Thanks, Rebecca.
The sea transformed itself into a vast and impenetrable piece of machinery, a fluid mechanism glistening in all its moving parts. The periodic explosions of morning light revealed it for what it was, the planet's gearbox, connecting and transmitting the sun's energy. Spots of happiness swapped places with zones of spite. Gulls blitzed down upon the tide, drank, wheeled away again. Under their cries, the channel buckled into a monumental lens, encasing everything in a glass the purest of blue. The water's liquid power surged, and yet the English Channel was not the source of this vigour. Rather, unpredictability flowed through it, loosed from the depths, as a current of its own making. All these beauties, the transience and the bewilderment they entailed, leapt at him and coursed through him, and carried him away.
Thank you. Well done. So now, I'd like to thank our wonderful speakers, Dee Newell, Rebecca Braun, our host here, Katrina, the team in the back, and the book is available outside with Vinnie Brown. Thank you all.
Well done.
Guys, really good.
Well done.